What's up, everyone, and welcome back to another video. People have been using video games as a way to escape reality and make life a little more interesting for decades. And of those video games, there seems to be one overwhelming category that just far outweighs the rest in addictive qualities. And that category happens to be MMORPGs. This is massive multiplayer online role-playing games. And anybody who considers themselves to be a gamer knows how easy it is to lose track of time and spend 3, 4, 5 hours, sometimes even entire days, just grinding away while you're totally immersed in these virtual worlds. And so a little while back, I had a thought. I was wondering, what is it about these video games that makes them so fun, addicting, and enjoyable compared to real life? I mean, when you compare these two side by side, real life and MMORPGs have a ton of overlap. First off, the character that you play as can easily be compared to you in your real life. And then the next thing that we notice is that what you're actually doing in these video games is you're taking a character and you're trying to build them and progress them and level up their skills and their abilities so that you're actually able to do new things. And that's exactly what you're trying to do in real life with yourself. And finally, you are usually grinding and working endlessly day after day trying to make as much money as you possibly can so that you can buy new things and travel to new places, and that's easily compared to how most people live their lives today. Now, despite all of the similarities between real life and games, I would say most people would probably agree with me if I said that making progression in your real life is probably a little bit more important than making progress in a video game with a virtual character. Now, there are some avid gamers out there who would probably disagree with me, and for the entirety of my childhood, I actually was the same way. I did not see real life as being more important. Video games were my purpose. It was how I found enjoyment and fun, and it was what I preferred to do with my time. I really just didn't care about working on myself and progressing in my real life as much as I did about progressing in these video games. So then it got me thinking, what is it about these same people that can spend hours grinding a video game, leveling up their virtual character, completing random tasks, trying to save up all this virtual money, do not have the same desire, in most cases, to do that same thing in their real life? What is it about video games that make them so much more tolerable and enjoyable than real life? And honestly, the only reasonable answer that I'm able to land on is that we're all just a bunch of lazy greaseball fucking nerds. No, I have a belief that there is something more going on here, something a little more at play. And so I've put together a list of what I consider to be some of the most addicting qualities about these games that I want to share with you guys. So through my own experience as a lifelong gamer, as well as some research that I've come across through books that I've read or different articles and stuff that I've found online, I've actually put together a list of what I think is actually happening here with these video games and why they're so psychologically addicting yet enjoyable at the same time. Now, at this point, you're probably saying, Nick, why in the hell should I give a shit about any of this? But hear me out. What if there was a way that you could take this list that I'm going to provide to you of all of the principles that I believe make video games so addicting yet so fun and enjoyable, and there was a way you could apply them to your life and your goals to become more effective and actually enjoy the process? And I know it seems a little bit ridiculous taking game principles and trying to apply them to life. Video games are for fun and life is simply difficult and hard, is what most people think. Well, trust me, this theory, this concept, it does actually have some substance. And whether you believe it or not, there's actually a ton of companies out there, massive companies, that are already doing this and putting these principles into place for their products and their services that they offer to you. And if you haven't figured it out by now, this process and this concept that I'm talking about is actually called gamification. We see some super popular apps like Headspace, which is a meditation app, and as you complete these exercises and these different courses and classes, you'll actually get different achievement symbols for your profile. Nike Run Club is another one where as you exercise, as you run, as you walk certain X amount of miles, you'll start to unlock these badges and these different things for your profile, and then you can share them with your friends who are also into that same kind of stuff. Now, if you haven't realized it yet, the reason that these apps and these businesses are using gamification is because they are tapping into certain psychological cues, the same ones that video games use, hence the name gamification, to make their products more entertaining and more addicting and to keep you coming back for more and spending more money. What's actually happening is whether it's in video games, in real life, on these apps, whatever it is, when we receive these things and we are shown that we're being rewarded for our accomplishments, what's actually happening is we're getting a release of dopamine in our brain. And this is a chemical in our brains that make us feel excitement, pleasure, and short-term happiness. Well, human beings are creatures of habit, and when we feel good, we tend to remember why we felt good from before, and we tend to do those things over and over and over again. So if a video game or an app made you feel good, the object behind that reward system is to try and build a habit that keeps us going back to the video game, keep playing, keep grinding, or going back to the app, trying to get that dopamine hit again and making us feel good over and over and over again. Right? And so this reward system is just one of the ways that gamification and video games have created such an addicting quality. All right, so now that everybody understands what gamification is and the purpose of it, let's go over the principles that actually keep you coming back for more. So what I'm planning on doing here is providing you with the 5 principles. I'm going to try and go as quick as I can to explain these and try and tie them in with some examples. And then we're going to talk about how we can actually apply them to your life so that you actually have some useful, actionable stuff to go off of. All right, so first on the list, we have leveling up or visible progress. Psychologically, we are much more motivated to continue doing something if we can actually see that we're making progress, if we have proof of results. So for example, somebody who's exercising, whether it's trying to lose weight or it's trying to gain muscle, if you can see the physical results happening, psychologically, it's a lot easier to continue pushing through it. Whereas if you're trying to diet and you're not seeing results, you might fall off the wagon because you don't have any proof of concept. In video games, developers make it extremely easy for us to notice our progression. We see a visual representation of a skill level right there on screen, as well as how much experience gain we have. And a lot of times there's something that pops up on screen to let you know that you've leveled up, as well as exciting music or something that happens visually on screen to get us excited and know that we did something good. And these things are super addicting to us because as we see these visual cues and as we notice these unlocks and these achievements, number one, we feel proud of our accomplishments. And another thing that's happening is dopamine is being rushed in, we're feeling excited, we're feeling happy, and it reinforces the habit of wanting to do that again. The next concept is having clarity. And something that I've noticed over the past few years that makes a massive difference in my productivity and my motivation is if I know exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and if I really desire whatever that end result is going to be. So to give you an example from real life, if I know for sure that all I have to do for work that day is show up, unload 3 truckloads of mulch, and spread it out across the front of a house and make the house look beautiful, and that is going to earn me as an end result $500 cash, I have no problem doing that. You either want the result or you don't, bad enough to put in the effort and have the motivation to do it. But the huge difference maker for me is that clear path and that clear reward, otherwise known as clarity. However, in video games, the sense of clarity that I'm talking about is blatantly obvious. With quests, tasks, and achievements built into the game, they tell you exactly what you're supposed to be doing and exactly what you are going to get for doing that work. There's no more questions to be asked. If you want the reward at the end of the quest line, you're just going to do what the game directs you to do. Next up on the list, we have one of the most addicting concepts yet, and that is the possibility for big rewards. Now, the reason for this is the same reason that the lottery is so unbelievably addicting. It is because when there is that question of what if I hit that jackpot in the lottery, it is no different than when you are playing a video game and there's the question of what if I get that super rare loot from that loot box, or what if I get that super rare drop from whatever I'm killing. And this addicting mechanic keeps us motivated and trying for whatever that big loot is. Next up, we've got being a part of a group, clan, or community. So taking it back to our roots, before we lived in a civilized world, being a part of a tribe or a group meant survival, because as everyone knows, there's strength in numbers. And it is naturally ingrained in us for us to want to feel like a valued part of a group or a community. And some common ways that we do this today is through our relationships and our social circles, the social media groups that we join, and even through our professions and our careers. And in games, developers are actually tapping into this concept by allowing you and all your friends to create some sort of a group, clan, tribe, or community to all work together to become more powerful. And last but not least, we have gathering and collecting. People have a natural tendency to want to collect things. However, there are a lot of people out there that are very motivated to gather the pieces of a collection not for monetary gain, but simply because it's satisfying and it feels good. And some of the more popular collector's items that I'm talking about are anything from classic cars and trading cards all the way to shoes. Now, in games, a lot of times there's pre-built collections of things like armor sets or trophies that all just have one goal, and that's to keep you wanting to gain that full collection. In fact, Pokemon actually made the slogan for their game, "Gotta catch 'em all," and it's one of the most popular collecting games of all time, so go figure. Alright, so now that we understand what makes these video games so addicting in the first place, let's make sure everything that you've learned isn't completely useless, and let's figure out how to apply it to your life. Alright, so I'm going to throw the list up somewhere on screen here so that we can keep track of the principles as we go. Now, let's start looking at some real-life examples of how you can start applying these to the things that you want to do in your life. Okay, so first we have leveling up or visible progress. And the most ideal way of applying this to some sort of a skill or hobby or thing you're trying to do in your life is by finding an app that will actually gamify the process for you like we had talked about before. I would suggest going to the App Store and searching for whatever hobby or skill or thing it is that you're trying to do. If apps come up that can do this process for you, then that's awesome, but very often this isn't always an option. So in the chance that this isn't an option and there is no app for you to pick from, the next best thing, in my opinion, would be to create some sort of a tier system within your skill. Now, in case this is starting to seem a little bit ridiculous, let me give you an example of a skill that's already doing this. People who practice martial arts have a visual representation of their skill level through the colored belt that they hold. And this becomes a very addicting process to work your way all the way up to a black belt. So if the skill that you're going after or the hobby that you're pursuing doesn't have the sort of tier system, have some fun with it and try to create, maybe within you and a group of your friends, some sort of a tier system that is going to represent your guys' skill levels. As you get better, you progress up through the tiers. Next, we have clarity, and this is extremely straightforward, yet most people don't take advantage of it when they're pursuing their goals. To gain clarity in whatever it is you're trying to do, all you need to figure out is your next few steps of what you need to do, as well as what those steps are going to get you so that you know why you're doing it. And this is where writing things down becomes so important. Let's say, for example, I decide that I want to start a business. I am going to actually write down or type into some sort of a digital document the questions that I need to have answered so that I have clarity in what I'm trying to do. So, for example, in business, I would say, what kind of business do I want to start? Who's my primary customer and what problems am I solving for that customer? How much money am I going to need? How much time is it going to take? Things like this give you a sense of clarity that makes taking action a lot easier. And having things like this written down with answers that are clearly stated right in front of you gives you the ability to remove the thinking and the contemplating later on so that you can just focus on taking action and doing. You know, it's like you wouldn't leave for vacation without knowing where you were going, the route that you needed to take to get there, how much the trip was going to cost. So when we plan things like that out, why don't we plan other things in our life? Why do we do things so unorganized in our daily lives? Next up, we have the possibility of huge rewards. And when you're looking at the addicting quality of this concept, the reason it's so addicting is because of its potential to change your life. Now, the application of the concept is pretty straightforward and simple. You need to start pursuing goals and pursuing things that have larger rewards at the end. You see, when we want something bad enough and the reward at the end is that desirable, the motivation is automatic. And if you want to find things like motivation, energy, and excitement, you need to be pursuing things that have the potential for bigger rewards at the end. If you seem to have lost your energy and your motivation to do things, it's probably because you have nothing exciting to look forward to. Remind yourself as often as possible of whatever it is that big potential and that big reward is that made you start pursuing that goal in the first place. All right, so nearing the end of this list, we've got being a part of a group or a community, and I cannot stress this point enough. So there's something called a mastermind. This is essentially a group of like-minded people who meet up, whether it's weekly or monthly or whatever it is, and they bounce ideas off of each other in an effort to help each other out. And in my opinion, there is almost nothing that compares to the motivation that you will gain from finding a group of people like this. A really relatable example I like to use for this is the fact that there's a lot of people out there that playing a video game alone just does not have any sort of meaning or purpose anymore. But if you add in an audience that either watches you live on Twitch or happens to watch your YouTube videos, that gives you a whole new meaning of added purpose. It adds a community for you to discuss things with and for you to talk and interact with. It adds a whole new level of motivation for you to pursue different goals. And so that is why I think it's unbelievably important that if you are lacking motivation to do something, find yourself a group or a community that you can join based around whatever goals you're pursuing. And last up on the list, we have gathering and collecting. Now, there are people out there that once they start some sort of a collection, we call them completionists, they absolutely have to finish it. I'm not one of those people, but I do know them. And so if you're one of these people, create some sort of a collection or start some sort of a collection that is based around the goal that you're pursuing or the hobby that you're pursuing, and use this as your motivation and your fuel for pushing you forward. All right, so we've gone over all the ways that you can tie these things in and apply them to your life. Let's try and wrap this video up. All right, so we have gone over gamification. We've talked about all the principles that make gamification possible, but what I would like to finish up with is, in my opinion, the most important point of the entire video. I truly believe this to be the single biggest reason that we look at video games as being more fun than real life. So when we tend to think of playing video games, we look at that entire experience as something that we are doing for fun and for entertainment, right? It is a way to escape life's responsibilities. But to me, that's where we're all going wrong, as if life is something that should need to be escaped from. You see, as kids, life was all about fun. It was all about entertainment. It was all about just enjoying ourselves. And somewhere along the line, as we transition into adulthood, we're told this story that it's time to grow up and take on a bunch of responsibilities. Oh, it's time to become a grown-up. It's time for you to figure out your life. And very often we are sort of force-fed this generic societal path that we are supposed to be on, as if life doesn't have an infinite number of possibilities and pathways that we could choose to take, with not one or the other being the right way or the wrong way, but just being your way. And so here it is. My biggest piece of advice for you would be to start thinking about your life in the same way that you think about video games. Start looking at your life as a source of fun and enjoyment. Do things that make you happy. And if your life isn't very fun right now, just realize you always have the ability to start changing things up. You might not be able to take all of your responsibilities and just drop them off to the side and forget about everything, but you can start making slow, incremental changes in the right direction. And I'd like you to remember just one thing. Success in any form is just small, daily progress in the right direction that will slowly add up over time. All right, everyone, that is going to do it for the video. Don't forget, if I helped you, don't forget to help me by clicking that thumbs up. It helps the channel grow, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.